Hello and welcome to Profiles in Risk. This is your host, Tony Cañas, switching to my radio voice. And today I have with me Travis Pine, founder and CEO, and Justin Waters, SVP of Client Relationships, Homeowners, for Solstice Innovations. So first of all, Travis and Justin, thank you for joining me today. How's it going?
Thank you.
Going great. Thank you for having us.
Awesome. My pleasure. Travis is in Seattle,
Correct.
recording February 27th, and Justin is in Tampa. All right. So Justin, sunny and beautiful in Tampa.
75 degrees, beautiful. I had a walk with my dogs last night as the sun was going down. Can't complain. It felt like San Diego weather.
I was down there about a month ago for the Florida Insurance Advocacy Forum,
Yes.
and it did nothing but rain. Now it snowed in the rest of the South, but yeah, not
Much better here now.
Travis, cloudy or
You
how's the
know, believe it or not, Justin likes to rub in the weather this time of year because typically it's usually gray and raining. It doesn't ever rain that hard in Seattle. It's just kind of always drizzling. But today is like Florida, sunny skies, probably, I don't know, 55 degrees. Kind of a
You're
rare,
welcome.
a rare a
right?
rare February
I
day
would have
for us.
completely understood a reschedule because hey, it's sunny in Seattle today. But then again, it's only like noon your time, so you can still make something of the afternoon after we're done
That's
recording.
right. That's
Uh,
right. You can kind
okay.
of get that first little hit to spring in the air.
Perfect.
And we
So
do have an office in Kalispell, Montana, Tony, as well. So it's a little bit colder over there for our IT folks, but we are building out an office in Tampa. So we'll be hosting a lot of our IT and client services here in the Tampa Bay
okay,
area.
cool. Montana makes a lot of sense for IT. It makes it cheap to cool down
The
uh,
computers.
Servers.
uh, the data centers. All right. So we always give the chance to give the elevator pitch. What is Solstice Innovations?
Justin, you want to go or?
Yeah, I could kick it off. So, Solstice Innovations, let me give you a quick background of who we are and what we've built. Travis and the leadership team started a company back in 2007, 2008 called Torrent Technologies, Torrent Flood. Very successful company in the NFIP write your own space for insurance carriers. I think we had 26 to 27 different companies in the write your own program on our system, all the way from $1 million companies up to hundreds of $1 million companies, and did extremely well. They sold that company back in 2015, brought the leadership team back together in 2018, and started Solstice Innovations. And what we built is a bigger, broader, faster, better system to handle all of the PNC space, not just flood. So homeowners, auto, commercial, Bob, you name it, we are building it in this PNC platform to handle all lines of business, including write your own flood.
Is that both commercial and personal?
It will be, yes. We're going to start with homeowners and flood first, get into the niche market, build that out, and then start digging into commercial and auto.
Okay, so focusing on flood, which is where you came from, and
That's right.
homeowners is kind of the obvious extension from flood.
That's right.
Yeah,
We
it's a
actually
massive
we
market.
actually got started. We stood up Solstice in the homeowner space, primarily because we had a non-compete with Marsh
Ah,
in the flood space. And so we actually built out our platform and got the sort of the vision put together in the Florida homeowners market. And then as soon as our non-compete was up, it was an easy pivot for us into the flood space. We're not certainly trying to be a Torrent 2.0, but it's a warm market for us. And not just for flood, but, as Justin said, we had companies that had, couple hundred thousand in premium in the flood space, all the way up to State Farm, kind of everybody in between, right? And so, that's a nice market for us to kind of get back into these companies, and not just in the flood space, but other lines of business as well. And I'll take a little step further back. My background, I've got a computer science degree and an accounting degree. Started out as a consultant with Anderson. Did that for just a couple right out of college, just for a couple years, and then here in the Seattle market, started working for one of my clients, which was an early stage software company that sort of then this was pre-com, but then went through the .com era. Helped start several tech companies, .com companies, if you will. And then sort of my 10-year high school reunion, went back to Kalispell, Montana, and which is where I was raised, and ran into a friend who said, "Hey, we were just kind of catching up," and she's like, I've got, I was kind of telling her what I've been doing, and she's like, she was a recruiter, and she's like, "Hey, there's a company here in town called National Flood Services." I'd never heard of them. Kalispell's maybe 50,000 people. It's a pretty small town. Broader area might be 100,000. And she's like, "You're exactly what this guy's looking for. He's looking for somebody that has an accounting degree, that's, knows modern technology, that's a local guy." And she's like, "That's a pretty specific thing for Montana." She's like, "You're kind of perfect for it. Would you at least just please go interview?" And I'm like, I don't know anything about, I don't know anything about insurance or, federal flood insurance. I don't know anything about AS400s or COBOL. Like, we were working on all the cutting edge stuff. And she's like, "It doesn't even matter. They're about to fire us. And he's looking for any, but I just want to put somebody in front of him." So I agreed to do it. And we had just sold one of our other .com companies. I just dyed my hair platinum blonde. And she's like, "Hey, just one request. Would you mind dyeing your hair brown? It's a pretty conservative company." And so I went and I was like, "Oh man, it took forever too to get that platinum in there." So I went and dyed my hair brown, and kind of the more I told the president at the time, like that, I'm probably not the right fit, but thanks. The more he kind of kept pursuing, wanted me to meet with the leadership team there, which I did. And then ultimately, next thing you know, I'm moving back to Montana from Seattle. So I spent about 3.5 years as the CTO at National Flood Services, or NFS. And during that time, their owner, they were owned by Fiserv, had gone out and kind of bought up all their competition. And so, and really what NFS, their business model is really kind of a TPA, where they do both the systems, but also the back office work for private insurance carriers that resell the NFIP product, resell flood insurance by FEMA. Most of the carriers that participate in the Write Your Own program, which is really the WIO companies, outsourced to a vendor for several different reasons, not the least of which it's a very kind of a niche product and nuanced, and there's a big kind of regulatory aspect and reporting aspect. So it's just easier for most of the companies. There are a couple companies out there, a handful of companies that do it themselves, but most of them outsource. Fiserv at that time had bought up all of NFS's competition, and so their appetite to innovate, which is what I was brought in to do, waned very quickly. They sort of lost interest. They're like, "Well, we own the whole market, so why would we change anything? Like, where are they going to go?" And I kind of, I told my wife at the time, I was like, "Man, if I hear the CEO or marketing guy say, 'Where are they going to go?' One more time, I'm going to leave and give them someplace to go." And that took about 2 weeks before that happened. And that's really what gave rise to Torrent Technologies. I was fortunate enough to bring over TJ Johnston, who had been there probably 16 years and was really kind of she ran the operation. So she came over as a co-founder with me at Torrent and the COO. And we built a really nice business there, sold that to Marsh, as Justin said. And then, we had to kind of stick out 3-year earn out kind of process. The day I could leave, I did. The big corporation really wasn't my jam, and the culture there. So I left, and sort of the course of the next year, most, if not all, of the rest of the senior leadership team also left and came and joined us. So we kind of got the band back together, so to speak, at Solstice. But the vision was much different and much more broad, as Justin said. And we're really not focused so much on the back office services, the BPO. We do have that element, but we really focus more on sort of the software side of it and the platform. And it's sort of a SaaS kind of approach. And we can talk a little bit more about what it is and the unique differentiators there. But I'm going to take a breath and see if Justin wants to pile in.
No, yeah, I mean, back to, we'll get into the system itself, but what we build is a one-stop shop holistic system that, handles policy, billing, underwriting, claims, documents, you name it. It's one holistic system. So you're not logging into, two or three different systems to, file a claim, to, underwriting to issue a policy or to make a payment. One holistic system. In addition to that, we built a consumer portal where customers can go online, make a payment, download their documents, report an F&O claim. So it is a very robust but highly configurable system that, if, the X company wants to make this change or do this, we can do it very, very quickly, which really sets us apart from a lot of the AS400s and legacy systems out there.
Yeah, I would say I think the genesis of Solstice and really the vision there came from a lot of lessons learned at other startups. This is my seventh. I've been in the sort of tech startup space, entrepreneur for most of my career, outside of a small stint there with NFS, and then I guess once Marsh bought us, wasn't real startup-y after that. But a lot of what went into my vision for the Solstice platform really kind of came out of lessons learned at Torrent and other places, and not just at that company, but our clients, and hearing the pain points they had. And there was so much commonality between, and they had, gone down the similar, modernization initiatives that had failed. They've, tried to buy something off the shelf or have somebody come build something or whatever that was, and just, I mean, hundreds of millions, billions really just blown on failed projects. And then, we kind of call it the new legacy, the software that sort of is dominating the space today on the, kind of P&C side, sort of the Duck Creeks and the guide wires that for the time they were built with more contemporary technology, kind of a three-tier architecture, either a Java stack or a Microsoft stack. But now those companies are, 25, 30 years old. They have, a lot of market share that they're trying to manage. They're not really innovating. They're trying to buy innovation. And so, kind of like in the past with Solstice, we were able to really get a blank slate and build it the way that we wanted to build it. And there's things that, you would do differently from your past. And we incorporated and kind of amalgamated all of that feedback that we got from our clients. Almost invariably, at Torrent, we would go show them our flood system, and people were like, "Oh my gosh, can you do this for us in homeowners or auto? This is amazing." And really the answer was no. And Torrent was really kind of a one-trick pony. It was a one knife, and it did its job very well, but that's kind of all it could do. And so what we've built at Solstice is much more like a Swiss Army knife that has a lot more functionality. We were very intentional about, I think one of everybody's that's, out there says their system is flexible and that they can, that it's highly configurable. I think sometimes that's daunting for the carriers too, because they're like, well, we don't want to have to configure, that's a lot. I mean, I know like the Duck Creeks and the guide wires and whatever, you can go to school to learn their scripting languages and all that stuff. What we've tried to do is make it, we've created an interface for business users to be able to manage their system. So it's very intuitive. The user experience is very easy. So they're not having to go learn some kind of third-party scripting language to customize their platform. And to do that, we have to write a tremendous amount of code to make that easy and to make that experience something that isn't daunting, because, if you're looking at, highly configurable can also be kind of scary for these clients, because they're like, well, we don't want to have to learn some other language. We just want to be able to go in and make the changes we need to make. And so we've been very intentional about that component of it, as well as our back office services. We call it our VBO, which is our virtual back office. So you can literally run an entire MGA or carrier back office operation completely virtual. So maybe the one silver lining of COVID is we kind of came up with that concept, and then COVID hit, and we're like, well, we hadn't written it yet, right? We were just getting started building it, but we're like, this would have really come in handy because everybody's working from home. But so anyway, I think that's a huge differentiator for us as well. I would say at Torrent, back at the time we were building this, nobody had seen a fully web-based kind of and frankly, Torrent was built with the same type of architecture, three-tier architecture. We used a Microsoft stack. Again, that's 20 years dated now, right? And so, but at that time, especially in this sort of niche flood space, people hadn't seen a 100% web-based system, right? I mean, they were so used to the mainframes, the green screens, and so that caught a lot of attention. Well, most companies have kind of caught up, at least on the front end. There's a lot of really nice lipstick on the pig, but there's still a pig in the back office, right? And so we were very intentional about making that back office very, very efficient and user friendly, leveraging AI hyper automation to really help companies cut cost. Because now, a fancy front end, everybody kind of has that, right? I mean, everybody's figured that out one way or another. But where we look at really differentiate, of course we do too, but what we're looking to do to differentiate ourselves is really, create a back office experience that allows the company to customize it to their business model, one, and then two, save them a lot of money on the OpEx. I mean, that's a big component. So not just help them on the sales side of it, which is obviously key, but also help them cut their back office expense. So I'll take a break now. Take a breath.
Okay. So I'm glad that you mentioned Guidewire and Duck Creek, because I was going to definitely ask, like, what are the advantages versus Guidewire and Duck Creek? At this point, hundreds of carriers have made that transformation to one or the other. Those projects are years and hundreds of millions, sometimes billions, usually behind schedule and behind and over budget, and you have to bring in a third party, Accenture or somebody
An SI partner,
to integrate that for you. So are you who's kind of the perfect client that you guys go for? Is it the ones that small and medium-sized carriers that haven't done the transformation, or like,
no, that's a great question. Our target clients really, we're not going, at least today, we're not going after the top tier, kind of the State Farm and Allstate and whatever. They have, all of them have some kind of hybrid, disparate different platforms to do different things. And it doesn't mean that we won't at some point, but we're really focused kind of on more the middle market and even the smaller market. And it's interesting when you bring up some of those companies. Our first client the homeowners client in Florida, they were a Guidewire client. And, it was, we heard, and we've heard this story from even in our former days, that model is, I think, somewhat dated. I remember early when I was a consultant at Anderson working on those kind of projects as an SI integrator. Typically it was a big ERP, kind of the PeopleSoft on whatever. And just kind of thinking that this is crazy. They spend tens, hundreds of millions of dollars to license software, and then they got to go hire 50 developers just to make it work. Like, it's like you're buying a car, and then you're spending all this money on a brand new car, and then you have to hire 10 mechanics just to make it work. That always seemed kind of nuts to me, even early in my career. And so it's a great question, because I think the way that we've designed our platform, and the other thing that's nuts is you look at the margins for those companies and you look at their financials. I mean, their margins are thin and they're making billions of dollars, and you're like, what are you spending all this money on? And a lot of it's marketing and other things, but a lot of it's just to keep the lights on, because those platforms aren't, they are dated. They are expensive for those companies to maintain. And that is something else that we were very intentional about with the architecture of Solstice. The Equinox is the name of our flagship architecture platform. And it's so, we can move quickly, we can be nimble, and we don't have to, you don't have to, we're not going to pitch it over to a software. If you want to change something on a report, or you want to add a field or whatever, there's a ton of things that you can do to the system without being dependent on us. And one of the things that we saw in kind of outside of the flood space was that these carriers had this almost kind of inverse toxic relationship with their software providers. They were dependent on them, but they hated them because anytime they wanted to do anything, it just they had to keep writing checks. And then those old kind of business models, they'll have upgrade paths that maybe every 18 months they'll come up with a new version, which is massively disruptive to the business. It creates, and a lot of these guys will customize their software on these platforms. It'll break a lot of that stuff. And that's why they don't like to be forced to upgrade. And some of them are, 3 or 4 upgrade paths behind. And these companies are like, we're forcing you to move, right? And they're like, well, we don't want to because everything's going to break. And it's an old way of doing business. And for Solstice, we push code every kind of 2 weeks. So there's no big upgrade paths, there's no maintenance, there's no licensing. It's purely SaaS. And so one of the things that, from just a model perspective, is we've looked at ways at aligning ourselves with our clients. So now we're their partners, and so our revenue model really is based on some metric of their volume or growth. So a percentage of premium, maybe PIF, based on PIF, something that now aligns us with them, that when they come to us and say, hey, if you could do this and this to the system, we're going to double our PIF in a year or whatever. Well, we're just going to do it because when they make more money, we make more money. So now instead of having this kind of inverse relationship when they're trying to grow, and every time they want to do something to grow or make themselves unique or whatever, their software partners are like, cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching. And that's where the problem is, right? And that's why you have this kind of toxic, and it wasn't just 1 or 2 clients. I mean, we've heard that everywhere, and we're sort of like, how are they in business? And look, I mean, they've got a mature product. That's been around a long time. It's well known. But every software company, most software companies, I should say, kind of have this sunset, and they're in the latter stages of their kind of. They've got a lot of market share. They're big marketing engines. They're making a ton of money from SI partners and others. They're kind of the default for now, but they're not innovating, and that they'll go away at some point. I mean, that's just inevitable, and maybe not completely go away, but how many people use a Nokia phone, right? So I think, I look at the space as kind of in 3 different dispensations. The first being kind of if you really think about it, insurance actually was very innovative, and in the sort of the history of computing, they were one of the first industries to really gravitate toward it, because they're like, well, hey, we can have a room full of actuaries or whatever, or we can get this huge machine and it'll do a lot of the stuff for us, right? And that's why they got stuck in kind of the 50s, 60s, and even 70s. And they were stuck with those systems because they did innovate and they did use it. And so then you kind of saw around the turn of the century these other players that came out, like I was talking about before. We call them the sort of the new legacy, but the 3-tier architecture is kind of more modern, obviously, than the green screens, but still somewhat dated today now. But they've kind of gotten their market share built, and now I think we're really on the cusp of a third sort of era or dispensation of in the insurance space from a technology perspective, kind of this insure tech buzzword. Companies like Solstice, and we're not the only ones out there doing this, like that are using, started with a blank canvas. There's not a lot though that truly have started with a blank canvas. A lot of them out there have taken older systems and they're trying to modernize them. They've tried to get different components and put them together, maybe a rating engine and then a claims engine, and then you do a document management system and kind of get them all kludged together. We built everything from the ground up, outside of like a chat bot or like our GL system. We're not going to build a GL system that's kind of a commodity tech. There's a dozen of them out there that work and they do a good job of it. Same with like chat bots. But the core of our system, we built, we own all the IP. And that way it's malleable. We can change it what we need to. We're not dependent on third parties. And we're not spending all our time trying to get all these different disparate components of a system to talk to each other. They're all natively, they're modularized in their own modules, and we can deploy them independent. But it's all, to Justin's earlier point, it's a holistic platform that all kind of speaks together. So you're not having to log out of a claims engine and go into a policy admin system and then get out of there and go into your document management system, and then you have a workflow system over here. And that's what a lot of these systems have kind of done. Ours is like one interface, you do all of it. So.
Yep. And just to kind of piggyback off what Travis said, I mean, hit the nail on the head. I've been in the industry 17, 18 years, and I've been on both sides of the coin. I've been on a system that was very legacy. It took a long time to launch a new product or a new state or a rate change or even a form change. I mean, it would take a lot of time just because it's on an old system. And then I've been on the kind of the newer modern systems, but very expensive. So we try to, take both of those analogies and say, what can we do better and how can we change it up? And like I said, we're using the newest, best technology out there at a very competitive price. So they're not hiring 20 developers to make a change, or they're not waiting 1 year to make a product enhancement.
What does the implementation look like?
Say that again.
Implementation. What?
Oh, well, that's actually that's a great question. So recently, excuse me, we were asked, we were competing in an RFP for a couple different lines of business, and we were asked to, in less than 2 weeks, to stand up an entirely new product. I think it was in one state, but basically soup to nuts. And they were sort of stress testing because I think everybody that was competing was like, oh, we can move quickly, we can pivot quickly. And a lot of the companies that are out there, you'll hear we're just trying to add another state, and our software vendor said it's going to take 9 months, right? And it's just kind of, you're like, what? And so in less than 2 weeks, I think it was more like 8 or 9 days, we stood up a complete, I mean, they gave us all the, rating guides, everything that we needed, forms, everything, soup to nuts. We stood up a new line of business for them. I think it was just one state, but still, just to kind of showcase, we actually can move quickly, right? And we can, I mean, the system, and I think that is important because I'm looking at it also from a business model perspective. A lot of why we built the architecture we did is because it's more efficient for us to run. Like, our margins at scale are pretty, I don't want to give away too much, but I mean, they're pretty frothy. That's because, it's not, we're kind of eating our own dog food. It's not just simpler for our clients, it's simpler for us, and we can move quicker. Now, it's taken a lot of time. I bet you we have 10 times the amount of code base we did at Torrent, just because of all of these different factors to be flexible, to add that customization element into the product. But we're using it too, right? So when we have these requests, we don't have to go write a bunch of code, which is what a lot of I was just had a friendly conversation, won't mention names, with a friendly competitor, and they're in the process of trying to modernize their platform because, the old system they had, they operated in a handful of different lines of business. They would have to literally have a whole team of developers just for that one line of business and that client. And that's just nuts, right? And I think that's why you see some of the the new legacy folks, their margins are so thin because you just got to throw bodies at it because the platforms really weren't designed. And honestly, at the time, the technology has come a long way in the last 2 decades, right? And so they just didn't have the same tools to build the platform at the same time. Same with Torrent. I mean, we built it on a three-tier architecture, Microsoft stack, and it's dated, and that's just, at the time it was the latest and greatest, but it's hard to then, especially when you start adding a big customer base, it's really hard to pull your architecture forward. It's almost impossible.
Yeah. And just kind of piggyback on the implementation side. So what we do is we take a look at, their manual, their filing, take a look at third-party integrations we have to integrate with, and kind of compile all those responsibilities, and then come back with a timeline. Hey, it's going to take this long to launch this state or this product. But as we're scaling and building out, things get a lot faster.
All right. So we talked about pricing. We talked about implementation. Right now, flood and homeowners, right? Auto is not live yet.
Not yet. We're really focused on flood and homeowners, dwelling fire, condo right now, more of that homeowners P&C space. We will eventually get to the auto. I would say give us maybe another year or two, but right now our niche focus is growing that homeowner space and flood.
That kind of brings up a good point. When we first started designing this, our go-to-market strategy wasn't to go build a platform that had 20 lines of business on it in all 50 states. That would have taken over a decade, and by the time you go live, technology's already advanced. And so we took more of an iterative approach, and start, kind of with one line of business in one state with one client and expand from there. And we just launched a private flood product last month. We're about to stand up this weekend. We're bringing on a new write your own company from one of the competitors out there, happened to be our former company. And we've got a robust pipeline in that space. But our, again, we're not kind of the big lift and shifts that you see some of the other software players. They want to come in and take 10 lines of business and do a big move. This is why those projects fail or are wildly over budget and over time, because that's a massive undertaking. And our approach is more kind of land and expand. Like, give us one line of business and we'll service the hell out of you for that with that line of business. And if you want, we're not going to be bugging you the whole time. But if what stood true in our former lives, people are going to see what we can do and be like, holy crap, can you do this for us in this line of business or this line of business? And then we can say yes. I think one of my kind of, I wouldn't call it hidden, but sort of, it's a big goal for Solstice is to be able to work with some of these carriers and actually power down some of those legacy systems. And they've tried and failed 2 and 3 and 4 times. And part of it's because, they've got an inland marine product that somebody built in 1960, and the developers are retired or dead, and they're like, well, we can't shut it down because we don't even know how it really works, right? And so we kind of look at, for me, what would be a big win, because I've just seen that happen over and over, and these guys have spent so much money to sort of modernize, and they still can't get off their legacy systems. And now they've reintroduced all these different disparate platforms over different decades, right? You got a power builder thing from the 90s, it's object oriented, blah blah blah, and then all of a sudden, oh crap, now we've got web, now we're trying to do that, and all these other things now cloud based. And so they end up making it kind of worse. And they're spending all their time trying to get these different disparate platforms to talk to each other, and some of those come through acquisitions and things like that as well. We want to be able, my big win here, besides building a very successful business, is being able to help these companies finally power down the dinosaur. And that might take 5 years, it might take 10 years, but say, okay, you've got 8 lines of business, 2 of them are still hitting that AS400. Let's start with these ones first, get them moved over. And then let's figure out how we can move those 2 lines of business, over kind of those legacy lines of business onto our platform and give them tools to build it and to manage it. And then go, they're going from 8 systems or 5 systems or 3 systems or whatever to 1. And now you've got, everything sitting on, and but it's not a big lift and shift. It's more of an iterative growth path. We get one line of business, and then if they come to us and ask for more, we can kind of start building a roadmap that says, here's a way we can maybe move everything over. It may take 10 years, it might take a decade, but we're going to get all those things over. And now you've got one platform that does everything. And that's when you can start, because a lot of these companies are spending, their IT groups are buried just getting all these disparate platforms to share data, and then the data is wrong, and it's a disaster, right? And so if you can get everything onto one platform, eventually, now you can start doing interesting things with pricing. You can bundle all of your data is there, all your back office is the same tool. You're not having to use 5 different systems to try to do your job. There's a lot of benefit, but again, our approach is really to create partnerships with our clients. My dad was an entrepreneur and in a very different, he was a restaurateur, so a very different space. But what was ingrained in me since I was a little kid is the customer's always right. And it seems like out there in the space, there's a lot of software companies that are like, no, we're right, and you're going to do it our way. And that's what I'm really excited about for Solstice, is that we've designed a platform that allows them to implement our tools and the way they want to do business. And they don't have to play by our rules. They can use it however they want to, and it's malleable that way. So we're pretty excited about what we built. We've got a pretty big, we've got a busy schedule this year onboarding clients. As Justin said, we're focused in kind of the homeowners private flood space now, but we're, going to be looking at crop hail. We're going to be, there's a lot of other interesting things that are pretty accretive to what we're doing, and to continue to just sort of expand over time. Like I said, go to market wasn't to come out with something with 20 lines of business. We're going to basically do that on demand as clients say, hey, can you help us with this commercial product, or can you help us with this? The answer is absolutely. And then we partner with them to build that out. So
what are the clients saying?
about the platform, I mean,
Yeah.
so I can't tell you enough how many times I've talked to like the CEOs, the CFOs about and heard that the pain points about their current software, whether it's an in-house system, whether some have braved trying to build software. We just talked to a client earlier, a prospective client earlier this week, and they're talking about how they built their own P&C system for homeowners, and it was 10 years too late, and they way over budget. And we continue to hear that. But when we talk about what we've done is we've removed the technology risk out of it for them. And so now it's like, here, it's working. Like, you can use it, and you don't have to pay us a bunch of money up front, or licensing and maintenance agreements and upgrade paths and all that crap. You can just come in and when we flip the switch, that's when you start paying us, and you only pay us for what you use when you use it, right? And so it's a much more efficient model, and I think the C-suite loves that. I think sometimes CTOs are a little bit less excited about what we're doing because but I think a lot of them that are forward looking see this as an opportunity for them as well, because having been a CTO at NFS, I mean, your team is really monopolized just keeping your clients happy and keeping the lights on. It's not that they can't innovate or they don't know how to, they just don't have time. And I think that's where our model, like, we've got the tech, we've got it for you here. You can use it however you want, and you're only going to pay for what you use, and you only start paying once you start using it. That kind of turns the current industry up on its head a little bit, where you've got your current implementations, you're spending tens, hundreds of millions up front before you even turn it on. And then you turn it on, and you've got to then spend more, tens or hundreds of millions just to get it to work the way you want it to. And that just seems kind of crazy.
Yeah, but it's very intuitive system. Agents are super happy, easy to get a quote, all the way from, underwriting, going through the workflow to claims process and their claims. But it's super intuitive, easy system to use. Like I said, we've had a lot of, good feedback where it says, hey, if we change this or make this, do this, it's going to help us grow our business, and we're just going to do it and help you guys grow. So we see it as a partnership with our clients to help them grow, which in return helps us grow as well.
Fantastic. And it can fit both carriers and MGAs?
Yes,
Yep.
that's actually a good point. We haven't. We may actually somewhat rebrand our product. It'll be the same product, but to really focus on the MGA space, because we've we've designed it to where it can support MGAs for that very reason, because we've heard that there's just not a lot of good software focused on the MGA space. I think I've heard of a couple companies that I think that do an okay job. I think they're somewhat newer companies, but we see that as a really kind of an interesting market to go after, leveraging what we've already built, and really, I think there is massive opportunity and a big demand in that space for more contemporary technology platforms. It seems like it's been a fairly underserved space, and everybody's kind of had to take a system here and then do that and bastardize this and get it to carry the two and make it work, right? And so we designed this from the foundation to be able to support. And there's some nuances there. There's some things that we had to be intentional about when we designed the architecture and built it specific to MGAs, and we had some really good folks from a subject matter expert perspective at that time helping us think through some of those things. And actually, the client that we launched in the private flood space is an MGA, so we do support both for sure.
Admitted, excess, surplus lines, all of it. So
All right, awesome. generally, I'm curious. What's on the development pipeline for the rest of this year? What are you excited? What new features are you excited?
Yeah, so a lot. Like I said, we've got a robust pipeline of clients we're bringing on board this year. That's going to consume a lot of those dev cycles. But I would say in this kind of version 2 of our claims interface is pretty sexy, and we're kind of rolling it out. Like I said, we push to production every kind of 2 weeks, so it's not like boom, here's a brand new claims interface. It's kind of coming out in pieces, but the prototype that I've seen end of last year is I mean, nobody will be able to touch it, and I'm pretty stoked about that. I think continuing to enhance what we call kind of our control panel, or command center that allow the tools that companies can use to manage their own product, continue to expose more, and also improve the UX. Right now, it needs some UX polish, to be honest. It's functional and it works. And like when we need to, like I said, we eat our own dog food. We use it to configure for clients, and it's not, you're not writing code to do it. But I think to make that more usable, that's going to be a big focus, because I think not only, again, does that make our clients more efficient, it prevents them calling us and asking us to do stuff, right? And so the more we can push to them for self-serve, the better it is. They want to do it anyway, and that's better for us. And then we're looking to start incorporating more AI into some of the claims processes, and to a certain extent some of the underwriting pieces. And there's a lot coming down the pike. And I remember, I don't know, 5 years ago, we went to one of the insurance conferences and everybody was blockchain all of a sudden, and I don't think 90% of them knew what it even meant. So I think there's a lot of that out there. We really try hard not to do the buzzword bingo. We've kind of learned, and we do have, I would say, first iterations of AI, but we're going to continue to develop that where it makes more sense. And I think part of it too is as people become more comfortable with it as well. And I think there's going to be kind of an industry learning curve there. We don't want to be too far ahead of it. Having been involved in several early startups during the .com, it's usually the first ones aren't necessarily the ones that are the innovators don't necessarily make it all the time. So we're keeping an eye on it, but and we definitely want to innovate with it, but we don't want to be too soon, if that makes sense, with it. And then people are like, well, I'm not comfortable having a machine make these decisions. And so we're kind of taking more of an iterative approach into that and kind of stair step into it, both as the technology advances and as I think the market becomes more comfortable with it. So,
yeah, and then from an operational side, what I'm pretty excited about is building out an office here in the Florida area. We have a lot of domestic insurance companies here in the Florida markets that I think we could serve them well. So having our IT staff and client services staff in their backyard, where we can be in their office, within an hour or two, if they need to meet with us or we need to sit down and go over things. So a lot of the client facing, we're getting really excited about as well.
Fantastic. Yeah, for the Florida market, makes a ton of sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we have found that because I think Florida writes over half of the nation's flood and out of the NFIP, and so if it's a kind of fertile ground for us, because if companies don't know me or TJ by name because of Torrent, they've definitely heard of Torrent, and we can say, well, we're the Torrent guys, and they're like, oh, okay, and that kind of it's sort of helps validate, bring some warm intros. Everybody kind of knows that product now, and it was a disruptor 20 years ago, and now they're like, oh, well, these guys are back and we're doing it again, right? And so the Florida office, to Justin's point too, is really going to be focused on onboarding clients, kind of once we get a deal signed, to sort of getting that product, if it's new, getting it stood up, if it's a conversion, getting that conversion kind of taken care of. And then once that's they're on the platform and spun up, the tech support and the customer support will be coming out of that office, and really the architectural brain trust largely is out of the Montana office. We've got I don't know of a better team that understands insurance and also how to build software. And we're very fortunate to have the combination of both. But it also, having that office down in the Tampa area will help preserve, because we don't want to become a new legacy, right? So we'll keep that core architecture team continuing to innovate, continuing to look at new technologies, continuing to improve not just the product, outward facing product, but also continuing to keep the architecture fresh, so we don't in 20 years become a new legacy.
All right. Thank you both very much for your time today. When this goes live, I'll tag you both and the company on LinkedIn. Yep. Thank you very much. Look forward to see you guys continue to grow into the other lines of business, and come back in a couple of years. Tell me how the growth has gone.
Awesome. And Tony, if you could let them know, they could go to our website, solstice.tech, to request a non-obligation demo to see a demo of our homeowner system or flood system.
Perfect. All the websites are on the show notes.
Beautiful.
Great. Awesome.
Thank you, Tony. Really do appreciate it, man.